Once, in a fold of the hills, there was a stately home called Badgerwood House. Families came to visit it and play and have picnics in its beautiful park. Behind the house was a children's farmyard with lots of animals. One of the animals was a piglet. His name was Piggo.
Piggo and the Peacock. Today was one of the windiest days the animals had ever known. Some of them loved it and were very excited. Piggo couldn't wait to get outside to feel the wind on his pink skin and see what it was doing. He said goodbye to his mum, promised to be back at feeding time, took a flying leap over the pig pen fence to land almost on top of Mr. Peacock, who, with his family, was walking past. This was the last straw for vain Mr. Peacock. He was just wishing that he had never come out in this awful wind. It was buffeting him this way and that way and making him look a perfect fool. Mr. Peacock was used to looking glorious, with his lovely colours, his crown and his gorgeous tail. He was used to posing on the lawns and hearing people say how wonderful he looked. But now, to be blown sideways by this rude wind, to feel it lift up his fine tail and hurry him along, Mr. Peacock could have died of shame. Suddenly he was hit by a pig. It was Piggo. "Hello," said Piggo brightly. "I am sorry, I should have looked. Are you all right?" Mr. Peacock was fit to burst. "Get out of the way, you stupid, insufferable piglet!" he exploded and swept away down the path. Piggo could have cried. He had hurt somebody. He had been called stupid and insufferable, and he wanted his mum. He jumped the fence, went into the sty, and silently lay down next to her. He could hear the wind howling and doors banging, and he stayed by his mum for a long time. After a while, though, he brightened up. He had said he was sorry to Mr. Peacock. Piggo decided to try to forget all about it and do something else instead. He listened carefully before jumping the fence a second time to make sure no one was coming, and then he trotted away on his own. The wind was still very strong and wild. Piggo invented a good game of trying to lean against the wind to see if it could hold him up. He found himself close to the edge of the wood. Suddenly something brightly coloured caught his eye. Something a rich blue-green was moving slowly through the grass at the edge of the wood. Ah! It was Mr. Peacock! Piggo turned to run away. He didn't want Mr. Peacock to tell him off again. But as he turned to go, he thought he saw another movement in the grass near Mr. Peacock. He looked hard. Another animal was in the field. Something was moving behind Mr. Peacock. Something reddy brown and large, which had flattened itself down close to the ground so as not to be seen. It snaked through the grass, a long tail held low behind it, and two pointed ears just showing above the grass. It padded softly, creeping up behind the unsuspecting peacock and crouching, waiting to pounce. Piggo realised with a shock of horror what was happening. "A fox! A fox, Mr. Peacock!" he squeaked at the top of his voice. "Behind you! Look out!" He saw the fox spring at Mr. Peacock. At the same time, Mr. Peacock heard Piggo and half flew, half jumped into the air. The fox leapt up behind him and caught Mr. Peacock's long, beautiful tail in his jaws. "Stop it!" Piggo squeaked. "Leave him alone! Stop it!" The fox, mouth filled with feathers, saw the squealing piglet racing towards him. He pulled a horrible face, spat out the feathers, and let go of Mr. Peacock's tail. He turned and slunk quickly back into the green depths of the wood. Mr. Peacock was dreadfully shocked. He peered out from underneath his mangled crown. "Piggo," he whispered in a horrified little voice. "He nearly caught me. If you hadn't come, I would have been eaten." Piggo said, "Don't let's think about it. Let us go home." Mr. Peacock turned towards the fence. "Oh, Mr. Peacock, your tail!" gasped Piggo, catching sight of it. The beautiful tail was ruined. It was ragged and tattered and utterly spoilt. "I don't mind," said Mr. Peacock in a shaky little voice, not at all like the important booming one he normally used. "I'm just glad to be alive. If it wasn't for you, Piggo, I'd have been the fox's dinner. And to think I was so horrible to you this morning." "It doesn't matter," Piggo said. "I wouldn't like to be jumped on by a pig either." Piggo took Mr. Peacock home. When they reached the farmyard, Mrs. Peahen and the pea-chicks made a terrific fuss of him and smoothed his poor broken feathers. Clarence the keeper came to see what was happening and gave Mr. Peacock a very thorough examination and a large handful of special corn. Mr. Peacock told everyone how Piggo had frightened away the fox, and then he stood in the farmyard with his family, his friends, and his special corn, feeling very important indeed.